Red Onion State Prison sits deep in the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia. It is isolated by design. The terrain is steep. The roads are narrow. Towns are sparse. The prison is far from major population centers. That distance matters. It limits public visibility. It limits family access. It reinforces separation. From the moment the facility opens in 1998, its purpose is clear. Red Onion is built to hold people the state classifies as its most dangerous inmates. It is Virginia's primary Supermax prison. Control is the mission. Isolation is the method. The prison replaces older maximum security units that state officials argue can no longer manage violent behavior. Red Onion is part of a national shift during the 1990s. Across the United States, corrections departments expand Supermax facilities. The philosophy is consistent. Remove high-risk prisoners from the general population. Reduce assaults. Restore order through separation. Red Onion reflects that thinking in its most rigid form. If stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing, because what happens next reveals how this system truly works. The layout of Red Onion reflects total control. The housing units are concrete and steel. Cells are small. Windows are narrow and placed high. Natural light is limited. Doors are solid, with food slots instead of bars. Surveillance cameras monitor nearly every movement. Sound carries poorly between cells. Silence becomes part of the environment. Prisoners rarely see each other. Many do not speak to another inmate for months. Most prisoners at Red Onion spend 22 to 23 hours a day alone in their cells. This is not temporary. Some remain in this status for years. Meals are delivered through slots. Recreation, when allowed, often occurs alone in enclosed outdoor cages. These spaces are sometimes called dog runs. They are surrounded by high walls or fencing. There is little view of the outside world. Human contact is minimal and tightly controlled. Movement inside the prison is heavily restricted. When prisoners leave their cells, they are usually shackled. Hands are cuffed. Feet are chained. Escorts are required. Routes are planned to avoid contact with others. Even medical visits follow this protocol. The goal is to prevent interaction. Every procedure reinforces separation. Red Onion operates on a step-down system. In theory, prisoners can earn reduced restrictions through compliant behavior. This system is presented as a path out of long-term isolation. In practice, advancement is slow. Criteria are strict. Infractions can reset progress. Many prisoners report spending years without meaningful change in conditions. Reviews occur, but outcomes are often predictable. Isolation continues. The brutality of Red Onion is not defined by daily physical violence. Assaults occur, but they are not the defining feature. Instead, the prison's impact comes from prolonged deprivation. Sensory input is limited. Social contact is rare. Routine is rigid. Days are nearly identical. Over time, this environment takes a psychological toll. Medical and legal records document patterns of mental deterioration among prisoners held in long-term solitary confinement. Symptoms include anxiety, depression, paranoia, and difficulty concentrating. Some prisoners experience hallucinations. Others develop hypersensitivity to noise or light. These effects are widely documented in correctional research. Red Onion becomes a case study in those findings. Lawsuits filed against the Virginia Department of Corrections describe self-harm incidents linked to isolation. Prisoners report cutting, head-banging, and suicide attempts. These accounts appear in court filings, medical evaluations, and investigative reports. The state disputes causation but acknowledges the incidents. Mental health care is provided, but within the same restrictive framework. Mental health units exist at Red Onion, but they operate inside a Supermax structure. Treatment often occurs through cell doors. Therapy sessions may be brief. Staffing shortages are common. Advocates argue that isolation undermines care. The environment itself contributes to deterioration. Treatment and confinement exist in tension. Correctional officials defend Red Onion as a necessary tool. They argue that the facility houses inmates who pose serious risks to staff and other prisoners. They cite past incidents of violence. They emphasize safety. From their perspective, isolation prevents greater harm. This rationale mirrors national justifications for Supermax prisons. Critics counter that isolation is used too broadly. They argue it becomes a default management strategy rather than a last resort. At Red Onion, classification decisions determine years of confinement. Those decisions rely on behavior histories, gang affiliations, and perceived threats. Appeals are limited. Transparency is minimal. The location of Red Onion amplifies its effects. Families often travel hours to reach the prison. Public transportation options are limited. Weather conditions can make travel difficult. Visitation is restricted. Physical barriers and glass partitions separate visitors from prisoners. Contact visits are rare or non-existent for most inmates. Family bonds weaken over time. Communication with the outside world is also limited. Phone calls are monitored and restricted. Mail is screened. Access to news and information is controlled. Radios and televisions, when allowed, are privileges that can be revoked. These constraints reduce connection to current events. Time inside Red Onion feels disconnected from the world beyond its walls. Staff at Red Onion work in a high-control environment. Training emphasizes security procedures and compliance. Officers manage prisoners who may have long histories of violence or resistance. Stress levels are high. Turnover is significant. The environment affects staff as well as inmates. Silence, tension, and routine shape daily work. Use of force incidents at Red Onion are documented. Pepper spray, restraint chairs, and cell extractions are part of the operational toolkit. These measures are authorized under policy. Reports describe their use in response to non-compliance, self-harm, or perceived threats. Each incident generates paperwork and review, but patterns persist. Oversight of Red Onion comes from multiple sources. Courts review lawsuits. Advocacy groups publish reports. Journalists investigate conditions. Internal audits occur. Despite this scrutiny, the core structure remains unchanged. Solitary confinement continues as the dominant management tool. Red Onion's reputation grows over time. It becomes known among prisoners across Virginia as a place of last resort. Transfers to Red Onion carry stigma. The threat of being sent there is used as leverage in other facilities. The prison's existence influences behavior beyond its walls. Nationally, debates over solitary confinement intensify during the 2000s and 2010s. Research accumulates. Professional organizations raise concerns. Some states reduce isolation practices. Others modify policies. Virginia makes adjustments, including changes to its step-down program. Critics argue these reforms are limited. The fundamental reliance on isolation remains. Former prisoners describe lasting effects after release from Red Onion. Some struggle with social interaction. Others report ongoing mental health issues. Re-entry into general population prisons can be difficult. Release into the community presents additional challenges. Years of isolation do not prepare individuals for social environments. Red Onion symbolizes a broader correctional philosophy. It reflects an approach that prioritizes control over rehabilitation. Silence replaces engagement. Deprivation replaces programming. The prison operates efficiently, but at a human cost. That cost is measured in psychological harm, fractured families, and long-term consequences. Supporters of Supermax prisons argue that alternatives are unrealistic. They point to limited resources and real threats. They frame isolation as containment, not punishment. Critics respond that containment itself becomes punishment when it is prolonged and extreme. Red Onion sits at the center of that disagreement. Data from Virginia shows that a relatively small percentage of the prison population is held at Red Onion. Yet the impact of the facility extends beyond numbers. It represents the outer boundary of incarceration practices. What happens there defines what the system permits. The architecture of Red Onion enforces compliance. Angles limit visibility. Doors block sound. Controls are centralized. Technology supports constant monitoring. Every design choice reduces autonomy. The environment leaves little room for spontaneity or human connection. Programs at Red Onion are limited. Educational opportunities are scarce. Group activities are rare. Work assignments are minimal. Without interaction, skill development stagnates. Rehabilitation is not the priority. Stability and order are. Legal challenges continue. Some cases lead to settlements. Others result in policy adjustments. Courts often defer to correctional authorities on security matters. This deference allows isolation practices to persist. Change, when it occurs, is incremental. Public awareness of Red Onion remains limited. Its remote location keeps it out of sight. Media access is restricted. Stories emerge through lawsuits and reports rather than direct observation. The prison operates largely unseen. For those inside, time moves slowly. Days blend together. The absence of variation becomes its own pressure. The environment tests endurance rather than strength. Compliance is rewarded with small changes. Resistance brings consequences. Red Onion is not unique, but it is emblematic. It shows how Supermax philosophy functions in practice. It demonstrates what happens when isolation becomes routine. It reveals the limits of control-based incarceration. As debates over prison reform continue, Red Onion remains operational. Its cells are occupied. Its routines continue. The questions it raises remain unresolved. How much isolation is justified? How long is too long? What costs are acceptable? The answers vary depending on perspective. For the state, Red Onion is a management solution. For prisoners, it is a place of extreme deprivation. For observers, it is a test of values. It forces a confrontation with the consequences of total control. Red Onion stands as a quiet facility in a remote landscape. There are no dramatic scenes. No constant noise. Its power lies in stillness. In repetition. In absence. The silence is the system.